Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. HDM here with a new build video for the Elder Scrolls Online. A little bit of a different video. I'm skipping the intro today and diving right in to what's going to be a solo werewolf build for ESO, a solo PVE build. Of course, the usual disclaimer is that this is primarily for soloing. It's not going to be min-max for pure DPS. We're going to talk a little bit about healing, about defense, about survivability. So keep that in mind. And I also have 3 different setups that I want to show you. So let's go ahead and jump into the transformation first. Check out the stats. This is going to be our basic setup, which is more of a damage-focused setup. Coming in about 10k max magicka, 19k max health, 37k max stamina, 600 mag recovery, 800 health recovery, and 1200 stamina recovery. That'll go up a little bit with our potion, actually. Your health recovery will jump up to about 1,000, and then about 1,400 stamina recovery. Weapon damage, 5,200. Weapon crit, 52%. Then our resistances are pretty solid for a medium armor build at 22,000. You also have increased physical damage from things like the amplitude passive, so it works out really well on the stamina sorcerer, but like I said, every class is going to have other advantages. Nightblade, for example, has more recovery. Dragon Knight has more defense. So I'm not going to say one class is better than the other. I'm just a sorcerer on this, and it's working fine for me. Now, in terms of your attribute points, obviously you want mostly into stamina here. 64 points is what I've done. You could put a little bit more into health or magicka if you want. Our TM takeaway broth is the food that I've chosen for this build. That's because it's a good mix of health, stamina, health recovery, and stamina recovery. Now you can use the new gold food. Do I have any? Yeah, you can use Bewitched Sugar Skulls. That's also a very good option here, especially if you want more max magicka for your heal. But personally, I don't think the werewolf heal, which costs magicka, is very good anymore. So I went just purely into stamina, and I like the extra stamina recovery on my Artaeum takeaway broth. Now the Mundus, I do prefer the Thief on a werewolf build, especially with the way that I've set this up, because, like I said, I'm not using the magicka-based heal as much. My healing is actually coming from my damage on this build. So the more damage, specifically the more crit damage I can put out, the higher my healing is going to be while in werewolf form, and also as a stamina sorcerer for crit surge. So it works good in both forms for me. So I do like the Thief Mundus the best there. In terms of our potions, I think Essence of Weapon Crit is going to be the best if you are able to craft this. That's because we get that Major Savagery bonus, that extra 10% weapon critical is really going to help. And then of course we get extra health recovery and a little mini burst heal there whenever we pop a potion, so that's good as well. Then you get the stamina and the stamina recovery. So very, very good potion for werewolves. Now, in terms of race choice, I am an orc. I think orc is going to be excellent for any type of werewolf build, regardless of class. You've got the max stamina increased by 2,000. You've got the max health, which is always good for soloing. This is a solo build. Plus, you do get a little bit of healing back every 4 seconds, which is helpful, to be honest. And then, of course, we get the max weapon damage here, increased by 258. And extra movement speed, cost reduction of sprinting. So all that is good stuff. Definitely good. You can make do with other races, of course, but some of those have downsides. So, for example, Nord gets ultimate recovery, but that's useless on a werewolf once you're in werewolf form. Also, Redguard gets cost reduction, but only of weapon ability, so that's not going to help a werewolf either. So I just think Orc makes the most sense. All right, so I think that covers the basics. Let's go ahead and jump into the different gear set options. So 3 different builds I wanted to show you. One, the first build is going to be more damage focused, and then the other 2 are going to focus more on healing and defensives and survivability. So again, being it solo, those are 2 things that you want to focus on. If you are more experienced though, and you have maybe more champion points available, then you can go pretty much full offensive and still do pretty well with a solo build for the werewolf. So our first 5-piece set is going to be the New Moon Acolyte set. This is the new crafted set out with the Dragonhold DLC. It's a very, very good damage set. In terms of the bonuses here, you can see we get weapon critical, we get weapon damage, we get physical penetration, which is very good, That's a rare bonus to get for sure. And then we get 464 weapon and spell damage. But this does come with a cost increase of 5%. Now let me explain why this makes sense on a werewolf. When you're in werewolf form, most of the damage that you do actually comes from your light attacks, which of course are free. So in terms of our rotation and how often we're doing abilities, we don't actually have to cast that many abilities because again, you're doing a lot of light attacks, even a lot of heavy attacks. So this 5% cost increase, it's really not a big deal on the werewolf build at all. So this is a great set for a werewolf. Now this is crafted, like I mentioned. It is 9 traits though, so you have to be maxed out at your crafting level in order to make this, but it is very good. So I am using this on my weapons. So front bar, I've got dual wield. I've got 2 daggers here. Now it's important to realize that your passive for crit does not work well in werewolf form. So I am getting extra bonus crit from having daggers, but that's only when I am not transformed. So keep that in mind. The traits though are important. So main hand, definitely recommend Nirnhond there for the most damage possible. And then offhand, I like precise. Again, I'm building a little bit more for crit chance on this build. Back bar is also going to be a new moon acolyte weapon. This is going to be an infused bow. And again, while I'm not transformed, I'll have access to this on the back bar. I can get that extra weapon damage. So we'll be close to like 5.6, 5.7 weapon damage when everything is procced in our orc form. So 2 slots there from my weapons, and then I'm just using 3 pieces on the body. So I have a medium belt, medium hands, and medium boots. All of these in divines with max stamina enchants. Now for our second 5-piece set, I went with another damage set, but I wanted to focus even more on penetration because again, solo, we don't have a tank debuffing anything for us. So my favorite for that is definitely going to be Spriggans. You get a nice bit of max stamina here, 2 stamina bonuses in fact, plus the weapon damage, plus the 3300 physical penetration. This is just a great damage set. I think this pairs really well with New Moon. I mean, we're stacking the weapon damage, we're stacking penetration, we're stacking stamina. So it's all good here. Now I am using this 2 pieces on the body, so I have legs and chest, and then 3 pieces on the jewelry. Now, Divines is good. You can make do with infused as well here. So I have an infused chest with a max stam, and then I wanted a little bit more health. Even on my orc, when you're soloing, you want to be kind of 18k minimum. You can get more, like 19k. That's going to be much better, even 20k. So you can drop 1 or 2 stamina enchants and put health here. So I've got 1 max health enchant here on the legs, just to get my health a little bit higher since I am solo. And in terms of the jewelry here, I have all weapon damage enchants, and I actually have 2 infused traits and 1 robust. And you can do actually 3 infused if you want. You can do 3 infused weapon damage, and your sustain will be pretty fine overall. Like we said, we're doing a lot of damage from just light attacks and heavy attacks, which don't cost any resources at all. So you might as well stack that weapon damage. Also, because we get more stamina when you're transformed, then losing those couple of robust traits, not really a big deal. So that's basically the damage setup. And then in terms of our monster helm, I am using the best soloing monster helm in the game, which of course is the Iceheart set. You get spell critical on the 1 piece, which doesn't help that much. But for the 2 piece, when you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to get a damage shield for 6 seconds. Now there is a tooltip error currently in the Dragonhold DLC. This is more like 10k damage shield, and that's because this actually increases with our Bastion CP. It's not showing the increase from Bastion, so don't worry about that if you see that right now. You're still getting the CP bonus there from that node. Now alternatives, let's say that you don't have New Moon Acolyte. What would you use instead? Well, I would actually use, let's see, I would use a pretty similar set called Briarheart. Briarheart gives you weapon crit, gives you stamina, and it gives you 434 weapon damage. So very similar numbers, but the difference here is that Briarheart is a proc, and it has some downtime. So you have 10% proc chance on critical damage to get that 434 weapon damage, so it'll be about 450 at golds, but that effect can only happen every 15 seconds. So it's up for 10 seconds and it's down for 5 seconds, so you won't have full uptime on your weapon damage. Kind of the nice thing though is that you do get healing during those 10 seconds. So while the effect is active, your critical strikes heal you for 617 health. So if you don't have New Moon and you have access to Briarheart, definitely pair that with Spriggans instead. Like I said, you won't have the same uptime on your weapon damage, but you will get a nice bit of healing, which actually kind of makes up for it in my opinion. So this is definitely a very, very good alternative. Now, if you're still struggling with survivability and you're trying to solo things, what you can do is instead of that, and instead of New Moon, you want to pick something more defensive. For that, I'm going to recommend a set called Nightmare. And Nightmare comes from the Spindle Clutch 1 or 2 dungeon. This is a heavy armor set, so this will already increase your defense, your health, and your survivability. The set bonuses are very good for soloing as well. You're going to add more armor, more health, and weapon damage. But the 5-piece set is very good for soloing, and that's because when you deal melee damage, you have a chance to proc Minor Maim in an AoE around you, and that's a 15% damage reduction. So this is really great for dealing with crowds, for dealing with bosses, for dungeons, for dealing with world bosses even. That Minor Maim is a great debuff, and it makes soloing so much easier. Now, yes, you can get Minor Maim in different ways. You can get it from poisons. You can also get it from one of the morphs of the Werewolf Ultimate, but we're not using that morph because it's awful. So I definitely recommend getting it in another way, and one of those ways would be from the Nightmare set. So that's another option if you're looking to reduce some of that incoming damage and be able to solo harder enemies. And then a couple other options for the Monster Helm. If you don't have Ice Heart, some options that are really good. I don't think I have them with me. Number one is going to be Mighty Chuden. That gives you more defenses because it gives you that armor buff, which we don't have access to while we're in werewolf form. And then the second choice is going to be Molag Kina. That's if you want to transform this build into more of like a group DPS build. Definitely check out Molag Kina. That gives you a ton of weapon damage. It does increase your cost, but again, werewolf, you're using mostly light attacks, so you're good to go. So let's see, we talked about enchants. In terms of armor weight, we want to do 5 medium and 2 heavy. So I have 2 heavy for my monster set. Heavy helmet, heavy shoulders. Everything else is medium. That's for soloing. If you want to build to more of a group build, you can go 7 medium. If you have Undaunted, you can do 5 medium, 1 heavy, 1 light for extra stats. There's different ways to build your armor based on the passives that you want. So definitely keep that in mind. But I think that covers all the different options. So let's talk about skills next. Really, really quick with the Stamina Sorcerer skills. Again, obviously you can pick different classes and your skills will then, of course, be different. But if you are a Stamina Sorcerer, I would recommend Dark Deal. I am using Dual Wield, so I'm using Whirling Blades here. This does good execute damage, by the way, now. Turn Evil for a stun, Shrouded Daggers for a spammable, and then Bound Armaments on the front bar with, of course, our ultimate. On the back bar with our bow, Poison Injection, Arrow Barrage, Vigor, Crit Surge, Hurricane, and Greater Storm Atronach here just for the passives, really. And that's for a Dual Wield bow setup. You can do 2-hand bow, which will be very good as well. If you decide to do 2-hand bow, then what I would recommend is keep all your other skills. And then Whirling Blades, I would swap to Reverse Slice. And then for your spammable, I would use Cleave there, the morph that gives you the damage shield. Very, very good for soloing. So let's talk about the werewolf skills and the morphs that I've chosen. Starting with the ultimate here. Werewolf Berserker is what I've chosen. So while you're transformed, light attacks apply a bleed, a very, very juicy bleed for 4 seconds. Your heavy attacks also deal splash damage and you get bonus stamina, and your stamina recovery is increased. So why this and not the other morph? The other morph just got completely nerfed into the ground. It's no longer viable in my opinion. The pets do give minor maim on the target, which is nice for soloing, but you're just losing so much damage by no longer having that bleed effect on your basic light attacks. And by not having any splash damage at all, that's terrible for soloing. So this morph is just, there's no other choice now, unfortunately, in my opinion. I mean, the splash damage, I wish it was a little bit more. I wish it was like 70 to 80%. That would be really nice. But you do need some splash damage for when you're dealing with trash packs. When you're trying to kill 6, 8, 10 mobs at a time, you need splash damage. And so this morph is the only one that's going to do that, really. And then, of course, that bleed on your light attacks is very good for boss fights. Really increases your damage single target. So this morph is just a no-brainer now, in my opinion. That's why I picked that one. Now, Feral Pounce is our gap closer. It does okay damage, but the reason why I would use this really is just to increase our transformation time. You get 4 seconds there if you pounce from at least 10 meters away. So keep that in mind. Sometimes I will use this even in like a desperate situation. If I'm about to lose my transformation form and I see like an ad coming into the fight, I'll just pounce on top of them to get that extra 4 seconds. So it's really good for that. And of course, you know, going from group to group to get through a dungeon faster, it's very good for that. Hircine's Rage is our heal, and I actually chose the Major Brutality morph, which gives a little bit less healing, but it gives you that bonus 20% weapon damage, which we're not going to get any other way, unless you want to waste a slot on your potion, which I guess you could do. But regardless, the healing just isn't that good, and the cost is so much more now, almost 6k Magicka, which is more than half of our Magicka pool. Anyways, you're not going to be able to rely on this as a heal. So really, I just decided this is going to be a buff for me pretty much, and it's going to be a random emergency heal if I need it, but I'm not depending on it for healing. Like you saw with the sets, I'm relying more on damage shields, or you know, you can use Briarheart or something like that. Also rely on your health recovery, on your potion to keep your health up. So I'm really just using this every 20, 25, 30 seconds for the buff, and that's it. Now, Deafening Roar, there's some interesting options here. The other morph gives you off balance, which is really good for extra damage, especially on bosses, as well as sustain because you get more resources back on an off balance heavy attack. But the fact that this morph gives us AoE Major Fracture, that's just too good to pass up in my opinion, especially when you're clearing your way through lots and lots of enemies. You can hit them all with that Major Fracture debuff, then hit them with a heavy attack so you get that splash damage, and you get extra damage on top of that because of the Major Fracture. So this is just really, really good. Make sure you apply this every 10 seconds. Howl of Agony is a single target spammable ability. Does decent damage. It'll do more damage if they're feared. So I will pull this out every once in a while. I mean, your light attack plus your bleed damage is going to be doing more than this does at this point anyways. So I don't really use it as much. And then the key to this build is going to be our AoE damage dealer here, Claws of Life, because it does great AoE damage, similar to like Cleave. It actually does more damage than Cleave, I believe. Does great dot damage, and it does passive healing. So this really is the key to staying alive. If you have this going on multiple enemies, plus you have your damage shield from like Ice Heart, then your survivability is very, very good. So always apply this and try to apply it to as many enemies as possible. Also, you want to make sure that you have feared them first, because applying Major Fracture is going to make them take more damage, which of course equals more healing. So I found this to be pretty much as effective as like Crit Surge on the Stamina Sorc. And then if you have multiple enemies, then it's that many times as effective. If you're hitting 2 enemies, your healing is doubled. 3 enemies, your healing gets tripled. So it's really, really strong in that regard. I definitely recommend that morph. And then in terms of the passives here, you'll want most of these. I'll go over them in case you're not familiar with the Werewolf. So the Devour passive you get now by default. So when you devour a corpse, you add 3 seconds to the duration of your transformation, and it restores 8% max health. You can do that for 4 seconds, so you can actually get some healing off of an ad, let's say that you kill in a fight. You can actually stop for a second and get some pretty decent healing, so you might want to consider that. Now, Pursuit increases your movement speed, and it also increases the stamina restore on your heavy attacks. So doing heavy attacks is pretty important on this build, both for the stamina restore and for the splash damage, which we talked about with the ultimate morph that we've chosen. So basically you'll want to mix, if you have, let's say, a group in front of you, you'll want to mix your fear and then into a heavy attack and into a claw to get that heal going as well. And all of those will be AoE attacks in that case. And then just alternate claw, heavy attack, claw, heavy attack. And as you get down to single targets, that's when you can light attack them or hit them with your howl. So Blood Rage, when you deal damage, this increases, again, the transformation time by 4 seconds. Now there is a 5-second cooldown, so that's important to note. You can't just do damage and stay transformed forever. There'll be a very slow kind of running down of your timer if all you're doing is damage. So you want to mix this in with devouring corpses, with doing your gap closer to get extra bonus transformation time. When you mix in all of those things together, that's when you can really stay in your form pretty much infinitely. But if all you're doing is running between mobs, doing damage, that's not going to do it for you. You definitely need to pause, devour corpses, do a gap closer, do something to counteract that ticking timer, because it's just going to keep going down. It goes down slowly. It goes down very slowly, which is cool, which is good, but you do have to counteract it a little bit. Blood Moon, you can use this to give your werewolf form to somebody else. Savage Strength, this is great. This increases your weapon damage by 18% and your spell and physical resistance by 10,000. Okay, this is why you can still solo as a medium armor build as a werewolf, because you get all that bonus spell and physical resistance. Now, Call of the Pack, you might be tempted not to pick this if you're soloing, but you have to read the description very carefully. This reduces the cost of remaining in your transformation by 20% for each werewolf in your group, including yourself. Okay, including yourself. So you're getting at least 20% at all times, which is good. You need to pick up this passive as well. And last but not least, let's go ahead and check out those champion points. Very important for soloing, definitely. I'm going to talk about max CP, that's 810. If you're not there yet, that's totally fine. You're going to want to focus more on the survivability aspects of your champion points if you have less points. Also, again, remember that you have sets like Nightmare, which is going to reduce your damage incoming by a lot. Maybe pick up Briarheart for increased healing. You can do a lot to augment your werewolf build. But this is what I'm using currently. So in the green tree, 23 Warlord, 21 Sprinter, 49 in Tenacity for those heavy attacks, 43 Health Recovery, 27 Arcanist, 64 Mooncalf, 23 Shadow Ward, 20 into Tumbling. In the blue tree, 19 into Blessed, 40 Master at Arms, and 39 Physical Weapon Expert. So this is where the werewolf build is a little bit different, because we're doing so many light and heavy attacks. You really want to buff those as much as possible. So I'm kind of splitting. Normally you'd have more points into Master at Arms and Thaumaturge. I'm putting a lot of those into Physical Weapon Expert, again, because of those light and heavy attacks. This is such a good bonus, you guys. 22% increased damage for only 39 points. That's not going to get much better than that. 49 into Mighty, that just increases your overall damage. 48 into Piercing, 31 Precise Strikes, and 44 Thaumaturge. That's going to help with our bleed damage. That's going to help our Claws of Life do more damage, which again equates to more healing. 61 into Ironclad in the red tree, 43 Hardy and Elemental Defender, 34 Thick-Skinned, 37 into Quick Recovery, and then 51 into Bastion. Now keep in mind, this is only if you're using the Ice Heart monster set. That's going to increase that damage shield proc from about 8,000 to close to 10,000 total damage shield. Again, there is a tooltip error currently. You're not going to see it on your set bonus, but you are getting it. So if you're not using Ice Heart, feel free to distribute that into other places. You can buff up Hardy and Elemental Defender. You can put more into medium armor focus, and I should actually move that into medium armor focus, because I'm using 5 pieces of medium, not 5 pieces of heavy anymore. So there you go. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for the solo PvE werewolf build. As always, if you enjoyed the build video, don't forget to crush that like button. It really does help. And let me know in the comments section what build videos you're looking forward to next. I do have an updated Stamina Sorcerer PvP build that I'm still working on. testing that right now, so that should be out soon. Keep an eye out for that one. In the meantime, to end the video, I've just got a couple of boss fights here so you can see how the build feels and how it plays. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments section and I'll do my best to answer those. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you around in the next video.